Let me briefly introduce myself, and then we're going to watch a short video, and I'll share a few words. So I am the Global Vice President for our data center organization. So I run all of Amazon's worldwide data centers, from a piece of land all the way up to a building that we've constructed and then operate 24/7 for customers, as well as all of our global sustainability efforts and energy efforts. So, and I'll talk about some of the stats we have here in a minute, but that all falls under my team's purview. For all of Amazon, we own energy procurement. I've actually been with Amazon for about 16 years. Prior to this role, I led a number of our services. Probably, if you're an AWS customer, I know most of you are AWS customers, services, little ones like S3 and EC2 were previously services that I was responsible for. And so it's really been exciting for me getting to learn this world in the last year that I've been in this role. And there's a lot of opportunity with the rise of Gen AI and other demands for data centers. So let's start with a quick video, and then I'll jump right in.
It sounds simple, just power your business with 100% renewable energy, but the detail that goes in and the industry expertise that's required to really understand how much energy you're consuming, what's the best way to drive new wind and solar to the grids around the world. It's complicated.
In 2019, we set a goal to match the electricity used across Amazon's global operations with renewable energy by 2030.
When we started our journey, we were at 42% renewable energy.
We were named the largest corporate purchaser of renewable energy in the world. Today, we're very proud to share that we've met that 100% goal 7 years ahead of schedule. The work has incorporated hundreds of people and endless hours of innovation to get here. The joint action by the corporate community has enabled this renewable energy industry to move fast. To achieve it on a rapid time frame is inspirational, and it's exciting to see what we can do when we move together as one.
So one of the things, the way I titled this talk is around the idea of being a pioneer. And it's something that I see every day with a lot of our customers and partners, and the way we approach doing business. And that is about pioneering, coming up with new ideas that really push the boundaries of what's possible, and then seeing and then getting there, seeing what it takes to get there, and constantly iterating on that. And that's really a philosophy that I've used in the last 16 years at Amazon, and I think is particularly relevant right now as we look at the massive increase in energy demand that we're seeing across the world, and how we're going to rise to meet that challenge with clean sources of energy. And so, we have, as the video sort of said, we've been working on renewable energy, going back to the mid-2010s, but certainly set that goal in 2019. And a big part, that goal would not have been possible to achieve without close partnership with a variety of companies, energy, manufacturers, the manufacturers of the solar panels and wind farms, wind turbines, the developers who build those projects, the operators who run those projects. And so, this is another area as we approach kind of the next 10 years of innovation in energy. First off, I want to continue to be pushing that boundary, to continue to pioneer, and do so with partnerships with the likes of many of you in this room. So it's one of the reasons I was really excited to come and speak today, is that I really see the opportunity for us to potentially to partner and to be pioneers, whether it's meeting your mission, your organization's mission, using AWS, or working together to achieve the AWS mission of powering all of our systems with clean energy. A big part of what we do, and I'll walk through this in a little bit of detail. Our approach in our data centers and our energy portfolio is really a holistic kind of top-to-bottom approach. So, and I'll explain, we had some research done about the overall efficiency of our data centers, and what you see is that happens at every layer of the stack. And so I'm excited to share a few words about that here coming up. But I've sort of jumped right in. Let's start with the Amazon Climate Pledge, which we launched in 2019. We pioneered the Climate Pledge, and that is our goal to be net zero carbon by 2040. And that is, I would say, a very ambitious goal, and it's only getting more challenging by the rising energy demand in the world. But right now we have more than 500 companies that have signed on to us. And for us, we know that this is going to be, the path to get to where we want to be and achieving net zero carbon is not going to be linear. It's going to require us, again, to continue to partner with pioneers across the whole spectrum, whether it's energy and fuels or our sustainable packaging, our waste reduction efforts, our water efforts. It's going to require innovation across the board. And that's part of the reason that we launched the Climate Pledge Fund, which is actually a $2 billion fund to invest in some of these companies. And I was really excited recently to hear about one of the investments we've done is in a company called Glacier. And what they are doing is using AI and robotics to help sort waste streams to improve the recycling or reuse of materials that are coming through a common waste stream. And we're already testing some of this technology in Amazon. And this is one of those ideas that it seems really easy in the abstract, but it's really hard when you get into the details of it. And I'm really excited about the progress that we're making there. As I said, with the Climate Pledge Fund, we now have more than 500 signatories to the Climate Pledge Fund right now, and that actually spans a total of about 45 countries and over 60 industries. And I think the key thing about the Climate Pledge Fund, if you're not a member, we'd love to have you join. It's I think a great community of companies that work together to pioneer together and around some of these solutions, and so that's been really awesome to see. As the video said, we took the goal in 2019, but really our renewable efforts go back into the mid-2010s. And since then, we've really, I would say, been a pioneer in large-scale corporate purchasing of renewable energy. That's what we started doing back in large scale in 2019 and 2020. We had a goal of 2030, which was obviously 11 years, and it only took essentially 5 years for us to get there, so about half the time. And yet, our work in this space is really only beginning. With the rising energy demand around the world, there is a lot more that we have to do to really achieve the carbon-free future that we want. Some of the other things that have been highlighted in our sustainability report that I'll just briefly touch on. Last year, in 2023, we had a total of 29 buildings that we use lower carbon steel and concrete. Those, Scope 3 emissions in the data centers are actually one of the harder things for us to reduce, and lower carbon steel and concrete are a couple of the key things that we've been able to start using. We're also starting to use, for backup generation, we're starting to use hydrotreated vegetable oil. And in fact, some of our facilities in Europe were some of the first to start doing that. And then we, on the waterfront, as we share here, in 2023, we got to be 41% progress. Our goal by 2030 is to be water positive, which is that we're returning more water to communities than we're consuming. And then the other thing you may have seen earlier this year was our announcement about building data centers that are co-located with a nuclear power facility. And that's happening outside of Philadelphia in the United States. And that's another area where, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but when I think about where we're headed towards a carbon-free future, that's where we do see nuclear energy as being a pretty interesting ingredient in doing that. In the short term, we've been really focused on finding the highest impact ways that we can really reduce our carbon emissions across all of Amazon. And obviously, one of the biggest things, and probably the easiest levers to pull, is around our energy consumption. And so that's really begat the focus on our energy projects. As you can see from the slides today, it's more than 500 renewable energy projects deployed around the world, and more than 28 gigawatts of total renewable energy capacity. But I would say that's just getting started. There's a lot more to come. And then, of course, in 2023, we announced achieving, the 100% of our operations was matched by renewable energy sources. And that includes, actually, there's 2 solar farms in France, as well as, I guess, 6 offshore wind farms offshore of Europe. All right, so I want to get into a little bit about how we think about efficiency at every single layer of the stack, because this is something that as AWS customers you just sort of automatically have access to, but it's also an area that as AWS partners or potential vendors, we're very interested in partnering on ways that we can further reduce at any layer of the stack. And so a study that was done this year by Accenture showed that running workloads on AWS is up to 4.1 times more of energy efficient than running on premises. And actually some pretty surprising, I'd say, remarkable statistics in Europe specifically, In Europe, running a storage-heavy workload on AWS leads to up to a 93% reduction, and a compute-heavy workload is up to a 99% reduction in the carbon emissions. And so, why is that? Well, I think this slide does a kind of a pretty good job of showing the different categories of reductions and sort of how they stack up to getting to that target. It's not that there's one kind of silver bullet that solves all, that makes a workload more efficient. It really takes, I think, innovation at every layer. And so a big part of it is running on more efficient hardware. We'll talk a little bit about some of our work in that area with our Graviton and Trainium 2 processors. It also means innovating in the data center equipment, so cooling efficiency and power efficiency is a big part of what we do in building data centers. And again, this is an area where we've been able to co-innovate with third parties as well and AWS partners to really operate to reduce the energy demands of our cooling systems, as well as reduce the loss of, improving power efficiency, eliminating conversion losses and other sources of inefficiency. Obviously, a big part of it's powering it with carbon-free energy. And then another piece of it is running, really optimizing workloads to run on AWS. And this is one of the things about the IT industry in general that I think collectively we need to work a lot harder at is that, when we look at utilization of resources, typically we find pretty low utilization in general. And so that's why serverless services like AWS Lambda or other services that really efficiently kind of time slice access to compute resources or storage resources can actually really improve the overall efficiency and the carbon impact of those workloads because we're handling the allocation of resource and are able to do that more efficiently. But altogether, this is what sort of sums up to that 99% carbon emission decrease running on AWS. Specifically, when we think about running in the data centers, one of the biggest tools we use is computational fluid dynamics. And so as we're building our data center designs, and we do build sort of template designs based on all of the best practices we have and all of the innovation in electrical systems and cooling systems, and then also in airflow, and this is where the computational fluid dynamics really comes in. We're able to really model the airflow and optimize the way that the buildings are designed to maximize the efficiency of the cooling systems. Another interesting fact with this is that we actually use we have an Amazon Sustainability Data Initiative where a lot of sustainability data sets are made available to our customers. As I understand, Medio France is one of the customers that use that data set. And we use that data set as well, some of the weather data, to really predict weather patterns because data centers, the weather actually has a pretty big influence on how efficient we can run. In certain types of, certain times of year, we can move into to run them almost entirely based off of outside air temperature. We don't need to add any mechanical cooling on it. And so knowing the weather, past weather and general weather patterns and being able to predict where it's going to go can really all help us run more efficiently. One of the areas that I think is I think very impressive to me in terms of our ability to really reduce emissions and improve efficiency is our chip design. And so we have been developing our own processors, both CPUs, for general purpose processing like our Graviton series, as well as processors for AI workloads with our Trainium processors. And so, of course, these processors today power really any type of workload. Our Graviton processors are great for general purpose computing, the kinds of things that you would normally use, an x86 processor for. And then Trainium is a chip that's really purpose-built for machine learning training. And so in places where you might otherwise use a GPU, Trainium can be a really effective, cost-efficient, and energy-efficient way to train. And so, with Graviton, we're now onto our 4th generation of processor. And these processor generations generally take 18 to 24 months each. So you can tell this is not something we started yesterday. This has really been an area we've invested for a long, long time. But with Graviton 3, just the prior generation of processor, that was actually, it used 60% less energy for the similar performance compared to other EC2 instances with equivalent processors. And Graviton 4, which recently launched, is even more energy efficient than that. So Graviton 3 was 60%, and then that's even increased in Graviton 4. And then in 2022, we launched AWS Trainium, and we're actually now launching our second generation. We have launched the second generation of Trainium, and this is leading, the cost savings are quite substantial, but really also the energy consumption savings of up to 25% using Trainium, I think is a key, customers ask me, how do we do this? And really, when we develop these chips, we're able to develop them really ground up, knowing what kind of workloads are running in the cloud and how we can eliminate power losses or inefficiencies in that chip design to really focus on the workloads that are most common in the cloud. So I just wanted to highlight a little example of a customer that's been able to adopt Graviton and really seen those reductions. Snowflake is a pretty popular partner of AWS and vendor to a lot of our customers for data analytics and other processing. And they moved from x86 to Graviton and saw an increase, 10% faster compute performance while reducing sort of the net carbon footprint to their customers by 57%. So I thought that was a pretty impressive win by them. All right, so where are we today, and sort of looking, kind of thinking about where we're going. We remain very committed to our net zero carbon commitment, by 2040. But I would say right now we're seeing that with the increase in demand particularly for GPU computing, the path is sort of changing in a way that no one has anticipated, and I think it's really going to be a bit of a nonlinear path to get to where we need to be. You look around us and all of the technology in our lives and all of the innovations with generative AI and other applications, digital applications that are still arriving, and clearly all of those need power to run. And so, our focus right now is on finding, new ways of adding carbon-free energy, to the grid, to the world, to power all of this demand. And that's going to be a huge amount of investment, continued significant investments in wind and solar, but we're also considering nuclear energy to power our operations. And really, at the end of the day, our belief is that we need carbon-free energy, and we should really be looking at all sorts of carbon-free sources to achieve the power that's required. So, again, when I get back to the idea of pioneering, and specifically with some startups and partners in Europe, including Wind Europe, is a good example of someone we've partnered with. And this is actually a very pragmatic partnership. One of the challenges to build renewable energy projects is getting all the permits and getting all the permits you need to build these correctly, and that can take a lot of effort, a lot of time. And so with Wind Europe, they actually partnered with Accenture to build a digital tool to simplify the permitting process called Easy Permits. And that's something that's being piloted today, and we're already seeing some reduced permitting times with that application. And so that's the kind of innovation. I mean, that's obviously not fundamental innovation in energy sources, but it's something that's really practical and required, I think, to accelerate this transition. The other, we have Talon Energy up here. Talon is the partner that we're working with around our nuclear energy project in the United States. And then we also see some examples of some of the utility scale battery that's being added here as well. One of the things that sometimes I get asked about is sort of the economic impact of some of the energy development projects. I think the economic impact is quite substantial, and there's a lot of new jobs and new technology required to successfully build these projects. We've estimated that between 2014 to 2022, there was a total of more than $12 billion invested in renewable energy projects by Amazon, and that have overall supported a total of around 39,000 full-time equivalent jobs. So, the economic benefits here, I think, are quite clear. The other thing I wanted to just briefly touch on is grids. This is one of the most challenging areas, I think, of deploying energy projects today, is really the need for modernization of the grid. Some of the oldest grids in the world are now approaching 85, between 50 and 85 years old, and the estimates are that it could take up to 150 years to sort of overhaul the grid to where we need them to be. So we're looking at a number of technologies, and again, this is an area we'd really be interested in partnering with anyone who's willing and who has good ideas, but making better use of the grids that are already there, and that can be through things like demand shaping or running with different redundancy models. We've explored both of those options with different parts of the grid. Adding capacity to the grid in select locations where it's most urgent to add that capacity, siting, being smarter about where we're siting demands and putting data centers to really maximize the use of generating assets. There's sort of a whole host of things that are happening under this umbrella. We actually recently published a blog that I'm happy to provide a link to. But I'd say grid modernization is one of the key things that kind of keeps me up, and I'm certainly on the look for new ideas and new solutions to make, to improve our ability to transmit power from where it's being generated to where it needs to be used. Yeah, oh, sorry, I actually jumped ahead. I think I mentioned this. Yeah, I mean, I'm on the previous slide, but the average grid in France, I believe, is now 50 years old. And again, the estimate is something like 150 years to completely overhaul this. So, to sum things up, there's a number of innovative solutions that we're developing as I've said, everything from the very low levels of the carbon and the steel that we're putting into our buildings, through the way that we're designing our cooling and power systems, up to our chip design, and then ultimately to how customers consume those services. We're looking at innovation at all layers of the stack, and this is an area that I'd love to chat with you and to partner on. Whatever new ideas you have about ways that we can add generating capacity, transmitting that generating capacity, or innovate in other areas of the stack to be able to move more quickly to meet the growing demands that we see around the world. And then I just wanted to quickly mention that I've been very happy to be in France a few times meeting with customers. I know many of you are in the room, but we have such a great population and base of customers here, and France is such a hub for energy worldwide that I think that there's a lot of opportunity amongst this group and your peers and your networks to really come up with some of those really innovative solutions for tomorrow. So we mentioned ENGIE earlier, EDF, along with other customers, whether it's Schneider Electric or Société Générale. We have a number of really, I'd say, world-leading customers here in France that we're excited to be partnered with. So thank you all for letting me spend a few minutes with you and just kind of explaining my perspective on how we can pioneer together. So thank you.